Well, for more on the latest outbreak of Ebola, I'm joined now in the studio by Dr. Obi Adigwe, who's the Director General of the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development here in Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And if there were to be an Ebola outbreak, I suppose there'd be pressure on you to come up with vaccines and things, or at least try and replicate the ones, or find some way of doing something about it to make the way to counter it more readily available to people here.
Well, if there were an outbreak, the first thing to ask is how prepared are we?
Well, I was going to get to that, but I wanted to start with your agency directly, because you deal in pharmaceutical research and development.
Yes, we're not quite at the level where we can start producing vaccines to deal with this kind of emergency now. The few companies, MAP, Regeneron, and I think one or two others that have started to produce experimental vaccines and formulations for Ebola are funded with hundreds of millions of dollars, and they've been at the game for over 10 years. So what NIPRID will be doing at this point in time, my agency,
right, your agency,
is looking at how to work with these people who already have products that are in the pipeline, to look at contextualizing those particular interventions for our setting. So things like supporting them in clinical trials for people of our genetic makeup, things like ensuring that when the vaccines are available and they're here in the country, if there were, God forbid, to be an outbreak, that they're used in a manner that is acceptable to our people.
Right.
Because
well, sure.
Yeah, we know that cultural differences across the world affects how people receive these type of interventions. I mean, we have a history with polio, for instance. So those are the kind of areas where NIPRID can start to do an immediate intervention or support in terms of that. But that being the case, NIPRID is also involved in the story about Nigeria producing its own vaccines. So as you know, the Nigerian government has signed an MOU with a Nigerian manufacturing company to start to produce vaccines in Nigeria. But it's not something that's a short-term story. But the good thing is that we've started the process. NIPRID is in the picture. And hopefully, if this type of thing comes up in a decade or so, we will be prepared to deal with it.
Well, I won't keep you much longer, because I know you've had a busy day and you've got other things to do. How prepared is Nigeria? There's a lot of talk about this outbreak spreading in Central Africa. If it were to come here?
We're prepared, but we can do more. So I haven't traveled abroad as often as I used to, but I've done 2 trips this year. And instinctively, I've always checked to see if we had functioning cameras at the ports. They are there, and they're working. We could do more. As you know, these kind of emergencies spread very quickly. We're a hop, step, and a jump away from the Democratic Republic of Congo. It means if it gets to somewhere like Cameroon, God forbid, there are 4 or 5 states on the border: Cross River, Taraba, Adamawa, and Borno. And you know the issues with Cameroon and refugees into Nigeria. Those could be issues. Right. So we need to do more along that axis.
Now let's talk more about the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and fears that it may well spill across borders and creep into West Africa, and of course possibly into Nigeria. The virus has already appeared over the border in Uganda, as we've been reporting, and Tanzania says it's on the alert, and the patient is under observation, or was under observation, in Kenya. of course, all that precautionary at this stage, but it does show how concerned the region and by extension the continent is. And still with me to discuss this latest outbreak of Ebola in the studio, Dr. Obi Adigwe, who's the Director General of the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development here in Nigeria. And sorry, we had to cut off a minute ago because we had to take a break. It's a pre-programmed commercial break. Let me just ask you about the Ebola reaction so far. There was a lot of criticism of the WHO not taking big enough, seriously enough, early enough last time. Is there a feeling that they are in danger of doing the same thing this time as well? I mean, we saw the spokesman for the USAID complaining.
Yes. I mean, there's always a danger of these kind of things being underestimated. However, we were in Geneva a couple of weeks ago for the World Health Assembly, and Ebola preparedness was on top of the agenda. I mean, if you go to my Twitter page today, you would see that one of the most important tweets I made in Geneva was when I was with the Director General, mentioning that rightfully
That's
so.
the WHO Director General.
The WHO, yes,
Right.
Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus.
Right, the Ethiopian.
Exactly. Mentioning that their current focus and their review of the issues that were limiting preparedness and reaction was the way to go. And the WHO DG has just been to Uganda. That's also a step in the right direction. There needs to be more, however, things like proper dissemination of information during a healthcare emergency. Now, that's an area where there was a weakness during the last emergency in Nigeria. While I was at the National Assembly as the head of health policy, we looked at that situation where Nigerians were taking concentrated salt solutions and bathing with salt solutions as a means of preventing Ebola. Obviously, it wouldn't work, but it was something that people were doing in a vacuum.
Right.
So that, as you know, nature abhors a vacuum. So if there's a vacuum in how knowledge and information and reactions are being disseminated, people come in. So one of the interventions we suggested based on the research we carried out then was that people like religious leaders, social media influencers need to be carried along in how information about Ebola is disseminated.
So information dissemination critical.
Critical.
And the fact that the world is aided this time, as opposed to 2014, by the fact that there is a vaccine that appears to be relatively effective, does that mean that we've got more tools?
Yeah, we're getting there because these are still experimental.
Right.
But again, it's a step in the right direction, but not where we need to go. As you know, in 2014, a couple of countries who had issues then requested for experimental treatment, and they were denied. And that raised the issues of medicine security. People around here being able to do more about interventions for diseases that are prevalent over here. I just got an update that some of those companies have now agreed to send some of the experimental treatment to places like the DRC and potentially Uganda. Like I said, it's a step in the right direction, but we need to start moving to the stage where research and development in our setting is properly funded so we can do more to develop interventions to address our issues.
Okay, Dr. Obi Adigwe, I want to thank you very much indeed for your patience. Thank you. And of course, Dr. Obi Adigwe is the Director General of the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development here in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Charles.